doesn't explain the El Nino. The El Nino overrides the CO2. Also, one of the experts in the deniers, Dr. Bill Gray, 55 years as a professional. He's the father of hurricane storm forecasting. He says storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, they're not going to increase in frequency and intensity. Dr. Spencer agrees. Dr. Christie agrees. Here's his quote. This is dynamite. I am of the opinion that this global warming crisis is one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated on the American people. Agreed. Thank you. Agreed with Dr. Gray. Dr. Reed Bryson, father of climatology. First one to speculate and dismiss global warming crisis. Dr. Max Mayfield, director of the National Hurricane Center. Dr. Frederick Seitzer, unfortunately deceased, President Emeritus of the National Academy of Science. These are all prestigious thinkers in climate science. Now I'm going to tackle that second item, the 4 science legs of the global warming crisis stool. The first one here is the corruption caused by money and power in Washington. Here's Frank's question being answered. $6 billion annually of tax money being spent on confirming the global warming crisis. $0 being spent for the skeptical scientists. That amounts to $300,000 bribe for 20,000 scientists to publish in the journals. Quite a hefty thing to overcome if you're on the other side. Second item, invalid surface station temperature data, and here I didn't include this on the handout. You may want to write down the name meteorologist Dr. Anthony Watts. This man has single-handedly unearthed disastrous information on how our surface temperatures are measured in the U.S. Here's his 2 sites. I write those down, surfacestations.org, whatsupwiththat.org. And I'll detail this in just a minute. Then the third item, non-validated computer climate models. Dr. Vincent Gray, who's a physical chemist, PhD, 18 years on the IPCC as an expert reviewer. His book, The Greenhouse Delusions, shreds the computer climate models. I'll give you one example from it. We don't have time for everything. And the last thing is, of course, the series of alarmist lies, like Greenland's melting, polar bears are dying. We'll get into that. Here is now back to Dr. Watts' data on surface stations. This is Marysville, Washington. And you can see this little box here called an MMTS, maximum minimum temperature sensor, hiding in amongst this building, next to an hot asphalt parking lot, next to hot air conditioning exhaust fans. All of those are adding heat to that sensor so that its plot looks like what? Well, here's 1900, and we're climbing up and up and up and up as they add a building, they add a parking lot, they add air conditioners, and this is what's happening. That's called urbanization. That thing was probably out in the field like it's supposed to be. NASA and NOAA guidelines say that should be in the middle of a field with not even a tree line nearby. And all this urbanization is what's distorted this data. Now, how big a problem is that? Probably just one example. There aren't any others in the United States. Well, not quite. This is Dr. Watts' team's pie chart summary of all the stations they've surveyed. 800 out of 1,200 total. These are official U.S. stations. You can see that only the blue and the green wedge, 11% of the data, is less than 1 degree C of error on the warm side. The yellow, the orange, the red wedge, 89% of the data goes from greater than 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, and up to greater than 5 degrees centigrade, warm on the warm side. You're not going to get any accurate information out of those. How bad is this across the country? Well, here it is. Remember, all the colors, the same colors are here for those stations. They're everywhere. Those stations have been swamped and overloaded with urbanization. They're all reading high. And that's where the myth comes from, one leg of the myth. The person who actually uncovered this urbanization and how the urbanization was affecting the temperature measurements was Dr. Pat Michaels, and he named it the urban heat island effect, because the cities, as they grow outward toward those measurement stations in the farm fields, are heating them up. And Dr. Michaels, 40 years, research professor at environmental sciences at University of Virginia at Charlottesville. You've never heard of that, right? No good science going on there, right? Okay, and all of these other, he's also the state climatologist in Virginia until this year, when a Democratic governor and legislature forced him out of office because he refused to give up his dissent from the global warming crisis myth. That's been happening to a disturbing number of state climatologists around the country. However, to be fair and balanced, Republican Senator John McCain is an ideologue of alarmism and won't look at the data or the logical analysis of the skeptics either. Okay, nor will Bill O'Reilly of Fox News. Now, these 4 books are dynamite. These are on your handout, Satanic Gases, The Meltdown, and so on. Excellent, excellent books. They will give you more information than you can get in a lifetime, dissecting all of the false claims and errors of the alarmists. Now we're going to go on and tackle the second leg of that science stool, the computer climate models. I already told you about Dr. Gray and his book, how in fact the climate models were not validated against past data or tested for future accuracy. What does that mean? Well, when you write a piece of software, what you do is you take data for which you know the outcome, you feed it in, and you see did we get the outcome. If you don't get the outcome, the model's no good. They didn't do that. None of the climate models have done that. There's all the different reasons why they're not doing that are in Dr. Gray's book. The second thing is they predict a tropical hotspot, which I'll show you in just a minute, that stubbornly refuses to appear. I'll show you a plot from Dr. Michaels. And the climate models, none of the climate models predicted our natural global cooling. I know it's hard to believe today. From 2001 to the present, and the astronomers think this is going to go out to 2050, at least to 2030, maybe 2050. So I'm only going to show you this one example here for the hot spots. Now these plots are not that difficult here. This is the climate model and what it predicts. This is the North Pole, this is the equator, this is the South Pole. And what this is, and this right here is up into the atmosphere from the surface of the Earth. And what the climate model is predicting is that there will be this warm spot, 1 or 1.5 degrees warmer than the rest of the atmosphere, if we in fact have CO2-induced global warming. What do you do if you're a real scientist? You send up balloons, satellites, and you go look for it, right? Well, they did. Here's the same plot. Here's the equator, and they looked up above for the red hot spot. No red hot spot. The climate models failed. They're wrong. Their predictions are absolutely no good. If they want to play with them, tweak the parameters, make them better, and 100 years come back and show them to us, that's fine. They're bad now. Let's tackle one of these myths. This is the 4th leg of the stool, the alarmist lies. Claim is this is an endangered species, going to be gone from the Earth in 50 years or less. Fact, the bear populations are increasing. How do I know? I don't go to the Arctic. But Mitch Taylor does. Professor Mitch Taylor is in charge of counting the bears in the largest region of Canada where all the bears are. They have the biggest group of bears in the whole world. And what he found is that in fact we had only 5,000, 10,000 bears back in 1950, 1960. And today we have 20 to 25,000.